So see if you can retreat to the cave of your mind. Use it to watch the breathing, first of all. Each respiration, letting go of the tension, letting go of the thoughts, focusing just on the details of the breathing, the respiration process. Then follow one respiration to your heart. Let go of the respiration. Let go of paying attention to it. Just observe the mind and its contents. Some of the contents are more objective, things that you're thinking about. Some of them are, in a sense, subjective states of mind, like anger or unease, fear, whatever. Let go of those states and try to sense the continuity of the nature of the mind, the conventional nature, which allows them to be. The clear light nature. Whatever thoughts arise, just let them go. Refocus on something. Refocus on the spaciousness, the clear light nature of the mind. very subtle. It has no particular color or shape. Like a clear sky. Let go of the lingering sense of your body and the sense of the mind of an observer. Controller of the meditation. That's only arising as an image to your consciousness within the space of your mind. And within that clear totality, try to recognize what we have encountered now. We have a perfect rebirth to practice the Dharma, what the Buddha called a life of leisure and endowment. We're free, or have the leisure from 8 unfree states, in which we'd have no chance to practice Dharma. No matter what we might think, we have obligations now, suffering, nothing compared to those unfree states where we have no freedom. Right now we can transform any suffering that we encounter into the practice of Dharma. It doesn't have to be an obstacle. We're also endowed, we have the wealth of 10 richnesses, both from our own side and from the side of the environment around us. Our willingness to practice, our not having great negative sins on our continuum, such as the 5 actions of immediate retribution that would prevent us from having a continuity of births. From the side outside, there's the existence of the Dharma still that was taught by the Buddha, the realization still existing in the world, benefactors helping, the existence of Sangha and other friends, everything we need. But this situation is transient. With every second, its duration is decreasing, what's left of it. We're as though falling through time, and often don't make use of it, caught up in the trivial affairs of this life, the appearances of this life, seeking some transient happiness. We forget to practice the Dharma. This life has so much value, such a life as this, to accumulate the causes of our ultimate liberation, our ultimate enlightenment, to achieve them. Method and wisdom, even in an instant, by practicing Tonglen, or devotion to our spiritual guide, we can purify incredible negative karmas that we've created in the past. Heavy, heavy actions. We can create immense virtue. Every second of this life, so valuable. Most living beings, it seems, in the world, that we see anyway, don't have that, all of those factors. They may not recognize the Dharma, its importance. They're caught up in pride and violence, arrogance. Seeking outer solutions. All of them have been our mothers, and as long as we stay within cyclic existence, will be, again and again, intimately related with us. Just as we want to be happy, everything going well, so do they. What hinders me from this immense, courageous thought of bodhicitta to work for their welfare, initially is my self-cherishing thought. Always wanting to be the victor, always thinking of myself first. Although I may have some moments of cherishing the happiness of others, it's minute, needs to be cultivated. Seeing this self-cherishing thought as our enemy, because it's impelled us to create negative karma, the wheel of weapons that come back to us again and again in our life, as actual suffering, as obstacles. And it prevents us from helping others, makes us needy, makes us aggressive, makes us proud, oblivious of what is really worthwhile for others. The thought that cherishes others more, although to our samsaric mind might seem painful, that mind brings all of the spiritual developments, all that is good. It's the doorway to every kind of Dharma happiness. With faith in the Dharma that we've been cultivating, seeing it as our real refuge, the Buddha who taught it, the actual valid person, and the spiritual aspirants who have put it into practice by realizing it directly, the Arya Sangha, the superior beings, as the triple gem capable of giving us real protection from cyclic existence. Think, I'm going to take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to get closer to enlightenment for the sake of others, and listen to the teachings in a lineage coming down from Atisha, his teacher, Dharmarakshita, from the words of the Buddha. I'm going to participate tonight for the welfare of all sentient beings, to get closer to enlightenment for their sake. And bring your attention back. Relax. How's everyone? Good meditation? Hmm? So, any pressing questions? Or not pressing questions? Beth?
If there is no truly existent I, then what has been reincarnated since beginningless time will continue to reincarnate theoretically forever? And why is anything?
I guess that proves it. I guess there is a truly existent I. Not just joking. Anyone want to answer that? Venerable? You heard the question? If there's no truly existent I, what is it that's been taking rebirth since beginningless time? That's for...
Subtle consciousness? I don't know if that's the term at George, but I would usually say a subtle consciousness.
Well, even subtle consciousness is not truly existent, sort of like the feeling that there's the... When the Buddha said there is no self, no Atma, almost seems like if there's no self, what is it that's taking rebirth? You want to say? Bonnie, were you going to say something? There is a conventionally existent self. There's conventionally existent Beth. There's conventionally existent, I forgot your cat's name. What was your cat's name? Sim, who passed away. It was conventionally existent Mom, who passed away. So that conventionally existent, almost two levels of conventionally existent person. The one that, in a sense, we say no longer is here. The Sim is no longer here, Mom's no longer here. And the subtle self that is, let's say what the gross self is. Gross self is, in a sense, the person imputed upon your five aggregates now. Do you know what I mean by the five aggregates?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, right?
Something, the body and the mind, basically. So like if you took apart, took apart your car, what kind of car do you have? Mazda. Okay, you take apart the Mazda, you put all of the metal parts in one pile, one aggregate, or pumbo. We say skanda. Actually, the word skanda kind of means pile, heap. You put all the metal in one, and then you put all the glass in another, and you put all the rubber in another, or things that are in the interior car. And what else? The petroleum products, oil and the gasoline. What else might there be in the car? Anything left up? Plastic? No, maybe that's in the rubber section. Maybe you'd end up with 4 or 5 different piles, and afterwards there's nothing left of the car. Right? Where's the car? Well, the car was a concept, a name that we imputed to that collection when it was arranged in a certain way, right? In the same way, a person is just a name that we impute to the parts. If we take apart Beth, we took apart Sim, say, we took apart its fur and the teeth and the blood, and then we took apart the mind, although it's not tangible. We divided out the feelings and the discriminations and the other parts of the mind. In the end, you'd expect maybe that either one of those parts would have been the person, or you'd find a person sort of there after you took away these other things. Okay? But there's nothing left. There's no person to be found. So our assumption that there is a truly existent person is erroneous. It's based on our ignorance. It's based on, that may sound too harsh. So what do you mean, ignorance? I'm not so ignorant. But basically, from a spiritual perspective, we are ignorant. Let me just finish one thought, Jim. Venerable. So there is a conventionally existent self that's just imputed onto your body and mind. But when they disintegrate, when the gross mind disappears at the time of death, and the gross body begins to disintegrate and is used, either put in the fire, is burned, or is buried, or like in Tibet, is chopped up and given to the birds or whatever. Even the parts are gone, so it's hard to say where the person is. There is a continuum of the person, though, that maybe from the tantric point of view, we could say, is imputed upon what the Venerable was referring to as the subtle mind and subtle wind. Right? Not just subtle mind. They're inseparable. Subtle mind and subtle wind. So that's something that's continued since beginningless time. And so we could label you that even when that subtle mind has entered into another body and a gross mind sort of evolves in that life, we can still say that's Mom's reincarnation or that's Sim's reincarnation, because that's the continuity that was within the subtle mind and wind that really we were referring to when we said Mom or Sim or whatever. But that's not a real person either. That's the only person we can impute on that is just a name that we impute onto that collection of parts also. So there is, although there is no truly findable person, there's some kind of continuity, independent arising that continues. That we have our own unbroken continuity of existence as a person. So the karma that we create now will have to, our future continuum, although it may not be called Beth, could be called Beth. Really it's an interesting coincidence. Maybe next life is still called Beth. I don't know. It's possible, right? No, but probably not. All the different names. You could be Frank, or you could be Chicken, or you could be, Hell Being, or Spirit, or, King of the Gods, or Queen of the Gods. What's her name? What am I thinking of? The one who's on TV, the Queen of the...
Xena.
Xena. Could be Xena. Could be Xena. Next slide. So there's something that continues, a subtle person. The merely imputed person continues. And on one level, in the sutra side, that's all they'd say, generally. From the tantric side, we'd say, also the basis for imputing that person continues, the subtle mind and subtle wind. But there could be a danger if you don't understand emptiness. You might think that's the soul, or that's the real me. That's just like these aggregates. It's just a basis upon which we label the person. The subtle wind and subtle mind. And right now, our gross body, our body now, and our gross mind is what we think of as ourself. When we talk about Beth, or we talk about, Dan, or, Bonnie, or whatever, it's that gross body and gross mind that we're referring to. Right? We label the person onto those. But if you look within that in your own experience, you'd expect to find, there's a sense of a self somewhere here, a soul. But you can't find it. And although that's not a finding of emptiness, that can lead one to investigate further. Well, what is the person? The Buddha said the person, a being, is merely imputed, is a concept, a name, merely imputed to their aggregates, And it's that merely imputed person that continues from life to life. But it does have to have a basis. In the sutra system, in the Hinayana, sometimes it becomes a little bit unclear because even in the Theravada teachings, in the Hinayana, sometimes it sounds like it's almost mystical. This person dies here and then arises here. It's like without anything connecting them. In the Mahayana and in some of the Hinayana teachings, they talk about the existence of an intermediate state between death and rebirth. Then that starts to make, in a causal sense, there's something that continues. A subtle mind leaves this body and takes rebirth in the other. And in Tantra, that's elaborated even more. There's great reason to understand that that does exist because one can actually experience it in meditation. Okay. Venerable, you had something you wanted to contribute.
So, just to get it clear, because I think it's an important question.
Yeah.
Am I getting it right that the 5 aggregates, along with the subtle mind, as Angie talked about it, those two together are, what you're talking about?
The 5 aggregates,
The 5 aggregates.
the 5 gross aggregates now, your body and mind, that's
the
the basis for imputing the gross Venerable Jimmy.
along with the subtle mind.
No, that doesn't enter into the subtle. The gross person is not necessarily imputed onto that.
Well, no, but
The
that's
continuum-
her question.
But
That's what I was referring to.
But what continues, you can say, what continues from life to life is the merely imputed person. So the merely imputed person can have different bases at different times. Because even now, your basis is different than it was when you were 6 years old, isn't it? Your body, your mind.
Yeah.
So we can't call you Jimmy anymore, Jimmy, because Jimmy was the name given to the little boy, I assume.
But the aggregates are the same.
No, the aggregates are not. The aggregates are changing every moment, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
They're impermanent.
But the aggregates, the changing aggregates, yes.
Changing aggregates.
Changing.
The continuum of the aggregates is the same continuum that we named Jimmy to. Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah.
But not the aggregates are not the same
No.
as they were.
No, it's,
Okay.
It's everything anicca, not the dukkha.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
But what is this first karma? That's what she was asking.
What's that? What is it?
What is the first cause of these aggregates, whether they're purified or impurified?
The first
subtle
cause. The first cause.
Yes, that's what she was asking.
I didn't hear that. That's good that you explained that to me. The first cause of these aggregates.
Isn't that what
There's no first cause.
It's different, but it's a good question.
See that? Okay. It's an interesting question.
That's
Yeah.
my question.
That's your question. Okay. It's not her question, but that's your question.
That's what I heard.
So the first cause of these aggregates, I don't know if you can find a beginning. You could say that the first cause of your body aggregate may have been your mom and dad's, fluids, the sperm and egg of the body aggregate, and then all the tofu and Coca-Cola and chocolate bars that you ate after that, and probably some other substances too that you ingested and that became part of your body aggregate. The first cause of this mind, of this life's gross mind, it's hard to say what you mean. If you mean the immediate cause, it was the subtle mind entering into that fertilized egg, and then the first moment of gross mind having the capacity to arise out of that, like, sort of expanding into the nervous system. When we talk about name and form and when we talk about the 12 links, name and form leading to the 5, leading to the 6 senses, leading to contact and feeling and so forth. Okay, so this is something that the subject of emptiness, something that we have to investigate when we study the Heart Sutra. Right now, we're going to spend more time on just trying to understand these two demons, the self-cherishing thought and the ignorance of self-grasping. Miss Swirl, you got something you want to say?
Well, let me know if you don't want to cover this now, but I think what Jimmy was asking is, what is the original cause of the subtle mind?
Yeah, and I kind of said there is no original cause, because when we talk about when did ignorance arise? When was I enlightened and then I fell from that? We were never enlightened. There was not a time when our mind came into existence initially. If we go back in time, the Buddha, he himself, not out of humility or out of a state of ignorance, said he couldn't see a beginning to the times when there were mothers in his past lives. He could not see it. It wasn't as though there was some time, he couldn't see far enough, and there might have been a time when there were no mothers and that he was arose or he was enlightened or something. It's not that. Wherever he looked in the past, as far back as he looked with his clairvoyance, there were always lives in which there were other lives in which he had mothers. We don't have a mother every single life. When we're born in the hell realm, we don't have a mother, but when we're born in the formless realm, we don't have a mother and so forth. But when we are born in the desire realm and so forth, we have mothers. So beginningless time we talk about, and beginningless continuity of ignorance. There wasn't a time when ignorance arose for the first time. For our minds that may seem problematic, we'd like to have a beginning of that. But when we get used to infinity when we study in grade school and high school and college, right? You studied it, you know what infinity is, your science major. So at first when we heard infinity plus 1,000 is bigger, right? No, it's not the same. It's infinity. So what? Come on, this is not right. It's got to be bigger than infinity. Infinity plus 17 is still equal to infinity. So some kind of mathematical concepts, after some time, we can begin to get our mind around. I think the same thing with the possibility of beginningless time. It just is a different way of looking at things than we are trained in the West. We've mentioned before, most of our cultures and history of religions talk about things in a historical way. God created the heavens and the earth, and the souls were created, and so forth. Buddhism says that that's not from the Buddhist point of view, that's not a precise portrayal of how we've come about. So the original cause of this subtle mind, you can always find a cause, whatever cause you find, you can always find a cause previous to that, the continuity of that subtle mind. Okay? Anyway, something to think about. Which stanza did we get to last time? 19, something like that? 20? Pardon? Was it?
Is it 23 your favorite number?
I don't think I got up to 23, my favorite number. I wanted to. I wanted to get to 23. That's my birth number. I was okay. 20. So when my mind is unclear and my heart is sad, as I said, some of the other texts that just have it reversed, it means the same thing. When my mind is sad and my heart is unclear, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds returned upon me for causing others to sin. We talked about this last time, right? Yes. From now on I shall renounce contributing to others' sinning. Well, that sounds a bit biblical. I don't like sinning. Maybe that's okay. Could be.
Could you say creating non-virtue?
Yeah, it's dikpa, papam, what we call, like the opposite of virtue. Dikpa, we say. So there are different ways that this can be interpreted. Sometimes it means this wheel of sharp weapons of our depression, our unhappiness, and our unclarity of mind has come about because due to the collection of negativity in other beings. One way of reading it also, Jampa Yignan, one of the Australian former monk and a very good translator, in some of the texts it doesn't say beings, it doesn't say kewo, it says kewa. So it looks like due to the collection of negativity in other lives. But our text here says kewo, other beings. And that can mean different interpretations. It means that due to the collection of negativity with regard to other beings, that we've created negativity, or that we've done actions which caused others to collect negativity. We put them in a hard position to bear, and they got angry, and so forth. They got unhappy, And that makes a little more sense in this context because it's one of the reasons that we sometimes get unhappy. One of the very strong reasons is that we've caused our gurus' minds to be disturbed in previous lives. It's one of the heavy karmas to cause one to have unhappy mind. So, causing others to be unhappy because of our actions. Our actions maybe out of laziness or making inappropriate rules or giving people bad advice. So that's one of the ways that that was interpreted. So that's kind of where we were last time. So 21, right? When I am deeply troubled over my lack of success, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for hindering the work of the holy ones. From now on I shall renounce all hindering. So this is not Geshe-la's translation. This is some scholars, quite good scholars, but sometimes may not be. We might be able to see some other ways of understanding it. So when our minds are sort of stirred up, when we're depressed, when we don't accomplish what we would like to, all of our activities. Who would we say, for instance, in terms of Tantra, what kind of rituals might we do to help to overcome that?
Tara?
Usually Tara, because Tara is the embodiment of enlightened activities. And when we need help in our activities to do actions like that, to pray to Tara and to create karma with respect to her, that particular dependent arising can help to create the karma to be successful. But here we're talking about the hindrances. When we don't accomplish what we want and our minds are upset as a result of that, this is again the wheel of sharp weapons coming back to us, like the boomerang, of the karma that we've created. In a sense, I think that wheel of sharp weapons is very good because we can think of that wheel of sharp weapons as destroying our ego. That wheel of sharp weapons coming back, rather than letting it destroy us. When that comes back to us, imagine, I'm going to put this wheel of sharp weapons on the self-cherishing thought, on the ego grasping, and try to utilize it that way. What were you saying, Jim? Okay. What's the wheel coming back from? Due to creating barche, means interruptions or interferences in the action, to the activities of, it says dampe le, so that here it says of holy ones. Here it just actually can mean apparently to excellent actions, to holy actions. Anytime, it doesn't have to be to holy beings. It could be other people who are trying to practice Dharma and we created obstacles to them, to their activities, either consciously or unconsciously, even unconsciously sometimes by creating obstacles to others, creating virtue that leaves karmic instincts in our mind to experience the ineffective nature of our own activities in the future, that they don't bring about the results that we want. So now, barche tamche pangwarja, now I will abandon all barche, means all hindrances or obstacles or interferences. So what are the kinds of things that one might do to hinder others? Sometimes it can be, what did Geshe-la say here, talking about even if thinking to invite someone out to a, when they mean to do puja or they mean to be meditating and you invite them out to do something else. Here we are looking at any type of goal that we want to accomplish in business, school, religious activity, and so on. Sometimes we lack the support of those who can help us, or things turn out exactly opposite to our expectations. As a result of such disappointments, we become very disturbed. This is usually the case, right? We don't get what we want, like the little kid having a tantrum. Or if you look in your own minds, very, very often it's like that. The cause of this is that in past lives we hindered good advisors in their projects, acted in contradiction to their instructions, and interfered with them. So here Geshe-la's taking it more as not just virtuous or excellent activities, but activities of the excellent good advisors. It means teachers and so forth. We must stop doing this and willingly accept the consequences of what we have done.
Wouldn't supporting others be the opposite more?
Pardon?
Wouldn't supporting others be a way to...
Right, and to, to start, to stop.
Just not hindering them, how about supporting?
Well, that is a good step, isn't it? It's at first, if we notice that our tendency is to, to criticize or to hinder or to so forth, to avoid that. And we have to start, when we talk about developing the mind, there's a famous verse that His Holiness, we always recite when we do teaching, when we have teachings, comes from the Buddha's teachings, and His Holiness is put in the temple in Dharamsala, a little verse. Basically it says, do nothing which is negative, collect all virtuous dharmas, completely tame the mind. This is the teaching of Buddha. There's 4 lines. So in a sense, it tells us a gradation. First of all, we have to prevent what is negative before we create what is positive. Because when our minds are still with not perfect motivation, we have to first sort of eliminate that bad motivation and clean up, not to harm others. So this is a start. But what you say is true. Next, then you have to collect virtuous dharmas. You have to do things that are positive. And what we would say in 20th century southern and middle California politically correct language, we have to be proactive, right? Oh, that's not just. We have to be proactive. We have to do something that's not just avoiding harming. We have to do something positive. But here, that would be included. That would be the next step, to actually recognize I shouldn't harm, but once you are able to help activities, then to actually, at the Dharma center. Right now, we might want to try to avoid harming the different kinds of activities that go on by our, criticism or our putting up some kind of obstacle to them. There are obstacles that sometimes come out of our mind. We might criticize, the center builds a meditation hut in the forest, and then we call up the zoning commission and say, oh, they shouldn't have built that. Something like that. That would be kind of like a kind of hindrance that could arise in the mind, right? So to avoid those kind of things, and in our own life, say for instance, when our gurus, our teachers want to accomplish something, and because of our own activities, we don't allow that to take place. They want a puja to take place, and we just don't come. They wanted everyone to come, or they wanted a certain study program to take place, and we don't take part. In a sense, our not participating is kind of an obstacle to that, to bringing about the holy deeds, to bringing about the fruition of those holy deeds that can have many, many ramifications other than that.
George, would you please repeat those 4 things that you said?
Yeah, there's you can find in the prayer book. I can point it out to you later. Basically, the prayer says, "Do nothing which is negative." That's the first line. Then collect all that is virtuous. The third line, completely tame the mind. And the fourth line, this is the teaching of the Buddha. So it kind of tells a sequence. First we have to subdue what's negative and then create, on the basis of that, then we can start to create very positive kinds of actions. When we talk about the different kinds of morality, there's the morality of abstaining from that which is negative, and then there's the morality of accumulating virtuous dharmas. I think that's partially what's being referred to here. That doesn't mean just creating good karma. It also means understanding, developing clairvoyance, developing knowledge, learning all the different methods that can benefit sentient beings, and developing the qualities within oneself. First you have to clean out, before you can give rise to a beautiful flower garden, you have to first clean out all the garbage. First, you have to get rid of the rocks. Of course, you can try to plant some flowers, and some little things might come up. But while there are big obstacles there, while there's negative things in the garden of your mind, it's hard to give rise to good, whole, huge crop of orchard of medicinal trees and plants and things. Then once you've done that, once you start to develop that on the method side, completely tame the mind. That would mean, in one sense, also not just on the method side, on the conventional level, eliminating negative karma and creating virtue and creating knowledge and so forth, and expertise, but also taming the mind through ethics, concentration, and wisdom, the wisdom that sees the emptiness of all phenomena, the emptiness of the self, completely liberating wisdom that is without fear, that puts everything in a final perspective. That is the wisdom that can completely tame the mind, to eliminate all of the instincts so that they'll never come back again. Otherwise, even we try to be good, we collect good karma, we purify negativity, still the negative instincts can arise again until we tame the mind. So it's not enough to do 100,000 prostrations 1,000,000 times. You might think, oh, that person must be enlightened. And they've done 100 million Vajrasattva mantras. Oh, they must be enlightened. They purified all their negative karma. If they haven't tamed the mind, if there's still the seeds of ignorance in their mind, one instant they can create, again, negative karma. And they can destroy the virtue that they've created. So we have to, that's our goal eventually, to eliminate these two things, the self-cherishing thought and the self-grasping. Those are the things that prevent us from taming the mind, ultimately. Okay?
George, if you go ahead and you, after you do something, you say, for the sake of all sentient beings, when you've done a deed, for the sake of all sentient beings until all sentient beings are free, and then the three scopes, or the three spheres, how would the virtue that you've created decline?
Yeah, so you can get angry again. Even if you purify all the negative karma that you've created, you like the ascetics that try to experience all negative karma, and you do all sorts of purification, and you accumulate merit. That's not the only thing. Those are cooperative conditions. The Buddha said to do those, but that's not enough. If you just stop there thinking, oh, I will attain enlightenment this way, you have to also accumulate wisdom of listening to teachings, thinking about it, meditating, on the basis then of ethical behavior, developing concentration, and using that concentration then to penetrate into reality with wisdom. The support of the non-distraction, not having negative karma that's distracting you or hindering you, and the support of virtue then can bring about realizations. You can develop wisdom. And you can cease these things, but without that, you can't. I said, I don't know. Certainly I can't. Maybe you can.
What I'm trying to say is that Lama Yeshe said, and I think I heard you say before in the class, that when somebody has created some virtue and dedicated it in the proper way with the three spheres.
Yeah, but those three spheres are referring to the wisdom that realizes emptiness of those three things. So that's talking about taming the mind. That's where you try to actualize it. That doesn't, at our level, we try to protect our karma as much as we can by conventional dedication and dedicating within our understanding of emptiness of the three spheres. But our understanding is not yet a direct realization, so it can't protect from all of the really strong anger that can arise in our mind. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to, tame the mind.
Every time somebody gets angry, all virtues wiped out?
No, this is another conversation. Another conversation. I want to get to verse 23 before the break. This is my magic number. Then we'll talk about it. Okay. Just joking. Okay. So 22. When my guru is displeased with me, no matter what I do, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds returned upon me for acting duplicitously toward the holy Dharma. From now on, I shall reduce what? I say, there looks like two M's there. My duplicity toward the Dharma. I thought I was going. So what this is saying is, no matter what I do, no matter what's done, when I cannot please the Lama, the Guru, this is the wheel of sharp weapons returning upon me for it says ngokok, having done ngokok. Ngo means face, kok means secret. Like we say kok, you're hidden. Kok means what's inside. So kok, you're this kok, I said no kok, ngokok. That is a word that means hypocrisy or duplicitousness. What do we say in the novels, the old Westerners? He speaks with forked tongue.
Doesn't walk his tongue.
He doesn't walk. Okay, there you go. He doesn't walk the talk, or he doesn't talk the walk. Doesn't walk the talk. It doesn't walk the talk. Okay, I don't know these things. Okay, thank you for telling me. Doesn't walk the talk. It means the same thing, right?
Yeah.
He speak with forked tongue. So what that means on one side, you to your gurus or to yourself even, you say, "Oh, I'm a Dharma practitioner," but then when it comes down to in your own behavior within your own mind, you don't actually act the way that you're speaking. It doesn't accord. So there's a hypocrisy there in a sense, or duplicitousness. So that means that although we say something to the gurus that we're going to be good or this or that, but then we don't actually follow through in that, and that's why they're not totally pleased with us. So we shouldn't think that this. I think this is always a big worry in people's minds, that the teacher, we want God or the guru or someone to be pleased with us, right? We want to be loved, isn't it? We almost, I think, many of us, we would like the guru to be the all-loving, all-kind father figure in heaven or whatever, and always to be guiding us in that way. So sometimes we're confused if the gurus don't seem pleased with us. But that in itself is a karmic manifestation of our own deeds in the past. And sometimes the gurus act even wrathfully for our benefit, to get us off our seat, to get us moving. Otherwise, if we're treated like our mom treated us when we were 2 years old, our whole life, we never would have gone to school, we never would have done it, we never would have gotten a job, we never would have learned how to do other things. So sometimes we have to be urged on. So this is I think, it doesn't say explicitly here, but I think in the tradition, all of you might say, where does he get these ideas that this is due to that? I think all of these have some scriptural source that you can find in the Buddhist scriptures, that the Buddha said, when this kind of thing happens, one of the causes can be this. So these are the karmic causes, so that we can think of when these various things happen, rather than focusing on the unhappiness of the situation. Oh, my guru's unpleased. No matter what I do, he doesn't like me or she doesn't like me. So to think this is a result of our own karma at that point. Take your mind away from putting fault on someone else and see it as Geshe Sopa says, put the finger at your own nose, Yes.
Is inability to have your actions match your aspirations, is that a form of duplicity according to this? Did you interpret that as being?
I think so. Well, we would like to be authentic, but sometimes we may say things. I'm doing this out of bodhicitta motivation, and we might think we're doing that, but it's a little bit naive.
Or maybe we know that we don't.
It could be that we know.
And we're really trying to.
Yeah, that's okay. That's no problem. But we may not. We may say, tell the gurus or whatever we say that I'm doing, I'm doing this for all sentient beings, but basically we're doing it still for our own self-gratification or to get some approval. Or I remember once, and when the Sangha was given a place to stay in Dharamsala. We hadn't been able to find a place for a long time, and the great Serkon Senchab Rinpoche suggested we pray to the statue of Guru Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, in the great temple in Dharamsala there in Makadganj. So we prayed, and when we were walking out, one of the monks met this lady who had a place that we stayed for many years after that. They called it Inji Gamba for some years, and Sunita. And it was like quick prayers, I tell you. With months, like a year or two, we hadn't had a place, and just like that, found, praying to Guru Rinpoche. And I can't remember what I was going to tell you this story. What's this about? Duplicity.
Fooling yourself with that.
Was it
Oh yeah.
referring to
Okay.
the points
So
that
yeah, no, I
were
remember. I remember. No, like wanting to have some kind of approval. So at one point we had this one little building we were going to use as the gompa, small little thing. And while other people were off in the market one day, I washed the floor and waxed it. I worked really hard all day. And when people came back, they came in and they looked around, and then they walked out, and I said, how about the floor? It's pretty nice, huh? Wanting to, we always want to get some kind of approval. So we're not always doing things purely out of altruistic motivation, but there's no fault in that necessarily. And we have to work toward that our actions become pure. They're not going to be pure at the very beginning. If we expect them to be pure, our actions and other people's actions to be pure at the beginning, we're being unrealistic. They can't be pure at the very beginning because our minds have been clouded with ignorance and self-cherishing since beginningless time. So we have to start somewhere. But here, this is talking about one particular karmic cause for that. How much time is there? Okay. So, verse 23. I'll just read and we'll take a break. When everyone contradicts me, it sounds like it's just for me, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for belittling shame and modesty. From now on, I shall avoid rough behavior, or tough behavior. What does it say? Rough or tough? Rough. Rough. Here this word belittling is this word I mentioned before. Kedu seba means, it means to slay the difference. It means others that engage in modesty and a sense of shame, the two different mental factors that you may know about, right? Others that may engage in that way, we belittle them and we say, oh, it's not important, or that's nothing special, they're acting that way. And as a result of that, one of the karmic consequences of that is for others to give us back criticism and to contradict us. For instance, here, kalok is the word that's translated here as contradiction, can also mean, ka means mouth, lok means reverse. So it means, can mean what comes out of the mouth is the reverse of what we expect. So instead of being complimented, we're criticized, or, sort of like that, as a result of ourself not valuing the practice of modesty and shame, or shame and embarrassment. So we'll talk about that a little after a little break. Let's take a little break and have some refreshment. Cause your aggregates to revive. Okay. Your aggregates are toasted? What's her name? Where's Swirl? She didn't come back.
She's outside.
Oh, she didn't put any sugar in my tea. I thought I have to. No, that's okay. I was just saying. I was asking if you're all sugared up, and she brought me back just very healthy tea, just peppermint tea. Yeah.
Do you want sugar though?
No, that's okay. It's fine. Okay. So when everyone contradicts me, You could say talks back. Kalok means reverse, reversing from the mouth. So it doesn't have to be contradicted necessarily, but like talk back, contradict. When everyone contradicts me, it's the weapon of my own evil deeds, wheel of sharp weapons, coming back upon me for not valuing, you could say, shame and modesty. So what are these two mental states, shame and modesty? These are two mental factors that we'll talk about in the 50, how many mental factors are there that Buddha talked about in the Mahayana? Do you know?
84,000.
How many? 84,000 delusions. But when we talk about the mental factors in the Abhidharma, the Mahayana Abhidharma, we talk about 51 mental factors. It'll give you a prelude to the Mind and Mental Factors course. Not 52. There's 52 weeks in a year. You'll always remember, I'll always ask someone, say 52. No, 51 mental factors. And of those, there are 5 omnipresent mental factors, 5 factors that take place whenever we ascertain an object, when we realize an object. There's 10. Then there are 11 virtuous minds. Was that 21? Right? Then there are 6 root afflictions. Was that 27? Then there are 20 secondary afflictions. Was that 47? And then there are 4 changeable states of mind. So the 51 general. It doesn't mean that those are the only states you can have. Those are the, as in general, the Buddha said these are the main ones, 51 mental factors. So of those, when we talk about the virtuous mental factors, there are 2, shame and embarrassment. We could translate them that way. Or how does it translate them here? Shame and modesty. So one of them is a sense of a hesitancy in the mind to engage in non-virtue, taking oneself as the basis for your reasoning. That is, I would feel ashamed. I would suffer. Taking in whatever way one thinks about it, taking oneself as the main reason. This is what is a virtuous mental factor called shame. And it prevents one from engaging in negative actions. And Nagarjuna, in his writings, actually said, shame and embarrassment and conscientiousness and minds like this are the root of all virtuous activities. So there's always going to be a certain sense of shame and modesty or shame and embarrassment. Embarrassment or modesty would be the sense of not doing something negative for taking others into consideration. That, for instance, your gurus would be displeased, or the society would not approve, or the Dharma would be brought into bad respect because you're a Dharma practitioner and here you are killing people or whatever, running down the street naked or something like that. Okay? So out of shame and embarrassment, you avoid certain kind of activity. We even use the word like that. We have. I'm embarrassed. I'm shame. I feel shame. I'd be ashamed to do that, right? So when we don't value shame and embarrassment, these mental factors, here says belittling, but the kedu seba can mean kind of not valuing, not necessarily putting them down, but in a sense is belittling them, not valuing them. This is the cause for that kind of thing happening to us, to have others talk back to us. So that happens to me all the time. So that's, I can see, it's very good for me because all of this is grist for my mill. Everywhere I turn, all these things are happening, so I can understand this is the results of my own past actions. From now on, I shall avoid rough behavior. Here it says misunba. Misumbala zembarja. I will shun, I will avoid what is impudent or irritable to others. Here it says rough behavior. I shall shun what is not meek, what is impudent, what is uncivilized, you can say. In other words, out of shame and modesty, I will begin to value them, and I will not I will not engage in behavior that causes others to feel discomfort, and so forth. Okay. So 24. Are we going? When there is disagreement, as soon as my companions gather, it is a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for peddling my discontent, and evil disposition everywhere. From now on, without any ulterior motive, I shall behave well toward all. So, just verbally, here it says, when there's disagreement, as soon as my retinue gather, so here it says companions. It can be taken, core can mean companions. It can also mean your servants. As soon as you get people to work for you, as soon as you have a household and you get a cook or you have a business and you have employees, there's always going to be some kind of uprising. If that kind of thing happens, or when your companions, your friends, and your family gather, there's always disagreements. It's not necessarily you're causing the disagreement now, but this is your experience. This is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for selling. It says peddling. I like that. I think somba means to as we say, song, merchant. It's 24, right? Yeah, for my selling everywhere, or as it says, peddling everywhere. Dukshi shingemba. Shiba means disposition, so it means for peddling or selling everywhere, dispensing, maybe you could say dispensing everywhere, poisonous disposition, bad disposition. Poison and bad disposition. It's sort of like just being bad character. So from now on, Dani, Kanglang, everywhere, I will produce a good disposition. Mishi. Mishi means character. I'll have a good character. How does he translate it here? I shall behave well toward all. Doesn't say toward all. Wherever, wherever. So instead of letting our bad, when we're in a bad mood, Venerable came up to me at tea break and she said, "Oh, are you tired?" Sort of like I look like I'm unhappy or something. So that means that we do that, isn't it? We let our own mental state outside, and our own, not just tiredness, but our own when we're upset. Often, I wonder if you notice it, oftentimes when we meet people, we might think they're unhappy with us or something. It's not that they're unhappy with us, they've just got a problem. You ever notice that? And to be aware of that, you probably know that, this common knowledge, right? Sometimes we remember that, sometimes this is a very good Dharma observation to make, that that kind of just dispensing of and putting out for everyone else to have to experience our own poisons and our own bad character will have karmic repercussion, that in the future there'll always be disagreements. And it's kind of as a karmic consequence of that, of our being disagreeable, others will be disagreeable amongst themselves and with us in our presence. So thinking like this, recognizing this, to do Tonglen on all of these, with respect to all of these, to use all of these as, whether you call it Tonglen or whether you think of it as other parts of the mind training, just to recognize this is the result of my own karma. So to take your attention away from the situation where you're projecting upon it that this is something unbearable and this is some other people's fault and so forth, which are projections of the mind which are not totally valid, taking your mind away from that, which causes your mind, if you don't take your mind away from it, causes your mind to become upset. Withdrawing that projection and instead thinking of the antidote, that this is the result of my own karma, and that can give you the patience to bear with that for the sake of the Dharma, for the sake, say, especially for the Mahayana, and then eventually, not just in general, sort of grin and bear it, but think, I will put this on the self-cherishing thought. Your wisdom is has the choice to do that, whatever this thing is. Your wisdom has the decision whether to bear that and let that self-cherishing thought that's always thinking about your own happiness and your own comfort and so forth, letting that suffering exist for some time without immediately shunning it and so forth and criticizing it. 25, when all my kin become my enemies, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for harboring evil thoughts. From now on I shall reduce my deceit and guile. So here's two other mental factors, yo and gyu. Here this text, it uses some very old languages. This is mukyo gyunam in the last line. Tani mukyo gyunam. Chungwarja, I will reduce. This is very, one can find in the dictionary, it's sort of a very old language for these two mental factors we call yo and gyu. So let's see, when my kin, those that are close to me, netsang, all of them become, when they rise up as enemies, your brothers and sisters, or your family, or your Dharma center, or whatever, or your countrymen. Almost seems like that way now, isn't it? This is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for harboring evil thoughts. Sampanyemba nangdu chukpayi. Chukpayi. That means due to putting within the mind, inside, evil thoughts, keeping evil thoughts within. It is harboring. It's nice. Now, knowing that, what's going to be the opposite of keeping evil thoughts inside? Here it says, from now on I shall reduce my deceit and guile. And these are the particular evil thoughts that were inside. So, what are deceit and guile? Here, the other way we can call them, I don't know, Yoga, I think sometimes called dissimulation. Do you know what dissimulation is? To dissimulate. It's one of those words that you need to know for crossword puzzles, I think. Do you know? Who knows what does dissimulation mean?
Kind of make believe through representation of something that's not really what it is.
Whoa. And English is not your first language.
No.
Everyone else here English is their first language, and you're the one who tells. See that? Okay. Very good. Very humbling. To dissimulate means kind of not quite to lie, but it means kind of to hide what's actually there. Yoga means not to show that you have faults. Gyu in Tibetan is talking about the other side of that kind of negative mind that pretends to be something you're not. You're pretending to have qualities you don't have. It's like putting on a mask to project something that you don't really have. It's like saying that you have qualities that you don't really have. You know the famous story of one Kadampa Geshe, I think it was Bungengel. Is that how he's pronounced? Bungengel. He was a thief. He was a bandit at first, and he had he used to pillage and take things from people. And finally, he encountered the Dharma and gave that up. Various reasons. We'll probably mention him sometime. Geshe Bungengel. There's many stories about him in the Lam Rim. And once, when he was in his hermitage, and he heard a benefactor was coming, his first thought was to clean up. First of all, his altar didn't have any stuff on the altar, so he put up the offering bowls for the first time, shined everything up, cleaned up the place. So what would that sort of like the motivation is kind of like to deceive, to make the other person think that he was always had this very nice altar, and then he realized, because he was always trying to overcome the worldly dharmas, And these you are kind of like related with what we call the wrong livelihoods, to do things out of dissimulation or out of deceit, to accumulate things that way. So he at a certain point, he took some ashes from his fireplace and he threw them on the altar. And one guru nearby at that point, who had clairvoyance, smiled, and his disciples asked him why, and he said, Bungengal has just made the best of offerings, when he was throwing the ashes on his water bowl. So it was much more appreciated than something, offering something that wasn't really, come from pure motivation. So when all my kin, those that are close to me, become enemies, when they rise up, it says literally, as enemies, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for harboring these kind of mean thoughts. From now on I shall reduce my deceit and guile. Let's see what here Geshe said. It's a very short one. At times even those closest to us can slowly turn against us. Our dear friends, teachers, neighbors, and relatives can become our enemies. This can cause us great misery and suffering. Again, we must recognize that we caused this by our past actions, by our unsympathetic attitude and negative feelings toward others. Such behavior stems from selfishness, lack of empathy, and insensitivity to others. We should blame ourselves, not others, for the situation, and resolve to act without deceit and hidden grudges in the future. When you do this, even if everyone appears to be your enemy, you will still have peace of mind. So this is, again, talking, whatever the outer situation is, if your mind is content, if your mind is controlled, whatever the outer situation appears, you don't necessarily have to become unhappy about it. If there were some situations that were inherently, sad, everyone that experiences them should feel sad upon seeing that, right? But not everyone will necessarily be upset if their luggage is lost or whatever. It is possible, because those situations are empty, it is possible to see them in different ways. If they were inherently existing, they would necessarily be experienced by everyone the same way. So 26. When I am sick with consumption or edema, maybe we could change the translation. It is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for unlawfully and indiscriminately stealing others' wealth. From now on, I shall renounce plundering others' wealth. Well, maybe they've taken some words here, I don't know. There is a word here, edema, muchu, kind of mean. What's dropsy? Do you remember what dropsy is? What is edema? Swelling of water, swelling, right? Yeah. And what is consumption? Actually, consumption is the old word for tuberculosis, isn't it? I don't think that's not what's meant here. It's kind of like other kind of. There's two different possibilities here. One of the texts, not the text that we have here, but the Tibetan says barcho ne, sort of interrupting illness. Here it says beitsong den, which is either den can mean tumor. Bei means moisture. Can't find in any of the dictionaries that particular thing, but some people actually talk about it as, in fact, I think Geshe actually mentions it in his commentary about illnesses that interfere with us somehow, or just different kinds of strange things that come up. This is the weapon, or tumors and so forth, cancer. It is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for, without justification, here it says unlawfully, timme, I think it says, and indiscriminately stealing others' wealth. Timme korla bakme bakbai. Bakba means to steal, to plunder. here it means, bakme means unconscientiously. He says indiscriminately. Maybe does that mean the same as unconscientiously? Unlawfully, unconscientiously to plunder. It doesn't say the wealth of others. It says core. And this is, in the last line, it says, from now on, kortok lasok pangwarja, I will give up plundering the possessions or wealth. It doesn't mean others' wealth. This is an expression, kortokpa, when we do, any of you do the prayer to the 35 Buddhas, the three heap sutra? You know, in there, when it's talking, at the beginning of the enumerating all the various kinds of negativities, it says, stealing the possessions of the Sangha and stealing the possession of the Sangha of the 10 directions and things like that. That's this term, kortokpa. So it means, here it's meaning mainly having in previous lives, this is what Geshe said in his commentary too, so I don't know why they're saying the wealth of others. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It means more like the wealth, the possessions of the triple gem. Either Geshe-la or Geshe Darge, Geshe Sopa or Geshe Darge mentioned how in India sometimes you put up candles in the altar of the temple and you turn your back and they're gone. It's not as though the gods took them. There's some little urchin stealing them or something. And we've done the same thing ourselves, right? We've stolen things. We've eaten the tormas from our altar when we were hungry late at night. We've taken the possessions of the triple gem. The heaviest karma, actually, it's said that you can actually purify the karma created with respect to the Buddha and Dharma with not so much difficulty, but the karma that we create with respect to the Sangha, because the Sangha, the possessions of the Sangha are shared by many, many people, it's much more difficult to purify. So stealing from the Sangha, belittling the Sangha, and so forth, especially taking the possessions of the Sangha. There's some stories that, due to taking the possessions of the Sangha in previous lives, or stealing in previous lives, even you go somewhere and you leave, sometimes the gold threads in the furniture stick to you. It's almost like you have no choice, because of having stolen in the past. So when we have this kind of situation, when we have a swelling, whether it be water or tumors or maybe even goiters and cancer, it's a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for unlawfully and without conscientiousness sometimes. So maybe not realizing, taking things that belong to the Sangha, or unlawfully, with a willful mind, taking them, and or taking things from the stupa, taking things from the altar. From now on, I shall renounce taking this kind of possessions of the triple gem. I think that's more what it's talking about, rather than the wealth of others.
That brings up a question of when you make offerings at your altar. I mean, I was told at one point that, when you come in with your groceries from the grocery store, you should carry them over to your altar and make offering on them. Mm-hmm. Right? They can be as simple as holding your bag in front of the altar and thinking something. And then presumably you can take offerings of food and so forth and put them on your altar. I was told that you can be free to go and take those and consume them anytime you want. Mm-hmm. That once you've made offering to them, that's the act which is beneficial, is making that offering. And then after that point, the Buddhas aren't going to eat the food, and so you can take it and do what you want with it. Right. So I'm presuming that the food that you've offered yourself on your altar and then have taken away, there's no problem with that. Right. What about, when you come upon, an altar in the wilderness and there's food at it and there are starving peasants there, would you take the food and give it to the starving people? Is that something that you've encountered? There was lots of food on the altar and there were starving peasants around, or you just trying to, just for the sake of, you're trying to find some kind of thing. There are different ideas about this. Sometimes some lamas, when they do puja, they say everything that's put on the altar
they have to they open up all of the things. They say if you, like for instance, if you put something so that you could store it later, they say then it's not really giving. Other lamas don't necessarily say that. So the different kind is though you're not really giving it unless it's you've opened up the container or something like that. Other lamas don't say that. Like my teacher Lama Yeshe said, as you'd probably heard, when you bring back the groceries from the store, to put them down and to meditate from some time and offer them. This presupposes, I think, like a real bodhisattva mind, that everything you have that you're using, you're not using just for the happiness of this lifetime, but for the propagation of your bodhisattva path. So even if there are some enjoyments, there's some, what are those potato chips, the little curved ones in a box? Pringles. Pringles? Pringles. Not Kringles, that's Chris. So even you buy Pringles, you know, you've gone out of your way, something that is going to taste nice, maybe which one do you like? The sour cream, crunchy ones. I see some mouths watering. Even you buy something like that, it's for, to recognize that you can offer to yourself and to the Buddhas, and you can offer that first of all, and then after some period of time you can actually consume that. But those things that when you're actually making puja, it's good to offer things that you can offer without any attachment at all. So that's why it was renowned in Tibet and Buddhism in general when you offer water. Because when you offer water, it's something that you can generally, unless there's a situation of thirst and there's hungry peasants, thirsty peasants around, in general, you can offer water without attachment. And one recognizes that the Buddha experiences that water with great bliss, and as they experience everything, but it's more easy for us to recognize that clarity and so forth. And there are various disciplines that you can offer it uniformly and without making noise and so forth. So something that you'd have to analyze. I can't say that there's one answer. Certainly, whatever one has as a bodhisattva, one tries to not think of it as mine, that one is the keeper of this for the welfare of all sentient beings. Sometimes you have to be, if you have a tape recorder that you're listening to the teachings, and someone comes and they want to listen to rock and roll, or who's the latest one that won all the Grammys? The daughter of Ravi Shankar. Nora Jones. Okay, so someone wants to listen to Nora Jones, and your tape recorder that you were listening to the teachings. At that point, the Bodhisattva could say, no, because this is going to be more beneficial. It's not as though I own it and you can't have it. So if you think of all of your possessions as kind of for the welfare of sentient beings, and working to the point where you can get to the point where you don't need to be the guardian of them, the what do you call it? Yeah, the chokidar. Then all of those things become kind of offering to sentient beings, because you're using them for sentient beings and using them for your own practice of the bodhisattva path. Whether you have a bed and a comfortable cushion and so forth, you shouldn't feel guilty about that, because it's for the welfare of sentient beings. And so with that kind of mindset, whenever you get groceries, to offer them, because they're not, you don't think of them as yours. You're thinking of them as sustenance as medicine to practice the bodhisattva path, or even in Tantra as substances to experience with great bliss. Then to offer that to the Buddhas, first to your gurus, I think there's great purpose of that. When you receive offerings to put on your altar, when you put your paycheck, put your paycheck on the altar, offer. In a sense, that is kind of relinquishing your own ownership of it, with egoistic intention, and I think that can be very beneficial. But you have to investigate. Some lamas will say that it doesn't become offering unless you do it without attachment. So they would contradict that. But there's neither that is not wrong, what they say, and nor is it contradict the other kind of behavior, this slightly different way of looking at it. So something I think that requires some analysis on our own part.
I can imagine offering the plate of Pringles, truly. without
Pringles? Oh, I thought it was
attachment,
Pringles. Yeah, Pringles.
And then coming back 5 minutes later and scarfing them all down.
You can't imagine offering them without.
Can't imagine.
Oh, you can't imagine without attachment and then scarfing them down. How would you? How could you scarf them down 5 minutes later? You mean the attachment wasn't there and then suddenly it?
The question is, how long did it take for the offering to be accepted?
Can't you scarf them down with bliss and offer
Oh.
So was the act of offering, completed once I mentally, made the offering? Or did it have to stay on the altar for
Is the
some period
plan
of
to
time?
scarf present?
Yeah, if the plan
An
to
apple and I came by later and picked
if
it up,
you're-
was it wrong?
if the actual yeah, I don't know. I think it takes some. You have to analyze. I can't say one pointedly. There can be benefit both. It can be benefit that way. Some lamas would say, unless you offer without attachment, it doesn't become offering. It doesn't become pure offering because it's still mixed with attachment. But we can investigate that. Yeah.
Something came to my mind when a monk would come and he's completely vegetarian and he's traveling and knocks at some door
Mm-hmm.
and he has his empty bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what this household would offer him, meat.
Mhm.
You eat it too, right?
It,
Isn't the same?
it depends. Generally, in the Theravada tradition, in the Hinayana, in the vows of the Pratimoksha, the monks asked the Buddha, if someone offers you meat, what should you do? And the Buddha said, if you didn't ask for it to be killed, if you didn't see it being killed, then you can eat it because you're sufficiently separated. I think we talked about this the other day, maybe when you weren't here. In the Mahayana, in some of the sutras, it says a bodhisattva should try to avoid eating meat when engaged in trying to develop compassion for sentient beings. So in some countries, Chinese Buddhists especially, don't eat. They almost think it is part of the monk's vow, although it's not part of the pratimoksha, part of the monk's vow. The bodhisattva, I think I might have told you this story once. One of my teachers, Serkon Sencha Rinpoche, great being, one of the tutors of the Dalai Lama, who was the reincarnation of Dharmadhuti, the son of Marpa. Serkon Rinpoche came and gave question and answer during a course that I was giving at Kopan one time. And one of the people who's now a professor in Boston, at the time he was just beginning his Dharma study, and he said, "Oh, Rinpoche, I've become a Buddhist during this course. Has been very moving, and I've become a vegetarian. But now I have a problem." Oh, wait, let me backtrack. First of all, Rinpoche was talking about the bodhisattva practice during his lecture. He was a great bodhisattva, and he was saying that for the sake of sentient beings, you should be able to do anything. You should be able to undergo any suffering. You should even be able to eat pus and blood. You should be able to experience suffering and so forth for the sake of sentient beings. So during the question and answer, this boy he told that he'd become a vegetarian. But when he goes back to Princeton, his auntie always makes a roast when they invite over for dinner. So what should he do? Implication meaning, should he be strict vegetarian and reject this or whatever? And Rinpoche, when it was translated to him, he looked very surprised. And he said, I already told you, for the sake of sentient beings, you should be able to eat pus and blood, let alone roast beef. So if one, first, I will not eat this. Almost, even a bodhisattva who is trying to develop compassion with a greater, not to offend others, not to hurt, should be able to eat even pus and blood, let alone roast beef. So I thought that was very practical advice from Rinpoche. It's not to say that Rinpoche wasn't compassionate. He was one of the great compassionate beings, but very practical. So, where are we here? 27. When my body is suddenly struck by contagious disease, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for committing acts that corrupted my vows. From now on, I shall renounce non-virtuous acts. I shall renounce, I shall give up. Geshe-la takes this, and several of the lamas took it. Literally it says contagious diseases, gone. The way this is spelled, it usually is translated as infectious diseases or contagious diseases. But several of the Geshis take it as though it were headache or some kind of stroke or some kind of heavy thing on the head, because they talk about during the tantric ceremonies a vajra is placed on your head, and it's said that your head will split if you break these vows and so forth. So they take it as maybe originally having been spelled differently, meaning headache or some kind of something like that. When my body is suddenly struck by contagious disease or by incredible headache that comes up spontaneously, this is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for committing acts that corrupted my vows. Damsignampe chawe chepai, by creating actions of degenerating my samayas. Literally it says. You know what samayas are? Damsik, words of honor. So having promised to do something, then not doing that, degenerating that, this is kind of, so maybe the original was talking about go meaning head rather than go meaning infectious. But anyway, this is how this and the other texts say infectious, but the lamas interpret it maybe from the commentary they were reading as meaning headache. Yeah, so I guess Siddhartha used to say, even though we take tantric vows, we break them very readily. Some of us have taken tantric vows, and maybe we've created much negative karma, and it maybe very likely will be born. This is sort of like my guru Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Maybe probably will be born. Maybe probably will be born in the hell realms, but in fact will be born in one of the Vajra hells. Geshe-Darga used to say, there at least we can have the pride of having, being in the Vajra hell. Have a certain pride of being.
Aren't they supposed to be like much worse?
And much worse, but at least we can have the pride of being in the Vajra hell. Okay? So 28. When my intellect is blind toward all that is worth knowing. Literally, it says Sheja Kunla Lodro Mongbayi. At the time, when my intellect, when my intelligence is clouded or dull with respect to all objects of knowledge, Sheja. Here it says all worth knowing. Literally, it says all objects of knowledge. This is the wheel of sharp weapons coming back upon me for claiming as the Dharma what ought to be put aside. Again, this could be taken differently due to maybe it could be we left out the Dharma. We didn't find time for that. We put the Dharma aside. We took the Dharma as suitable to be put aside. Here it's taking it a little bit different, claiming as the Dharma what ought to be put aside. Basically, either way almost has the same implication. That is, when there was a choice between practicing Dharma and practicing other things, we were attracted to these other things and we put the Dharma aside. The other things are the things that should be put aside and practice the Dharma. But we did the opposite. From now on, I shall cultivate wisdom that comes from study, examination, and meditation. So the only way that we can develop some clarity of mind is by cumulatively developing wisdom. There's there are different kinds of wisdom. First of all, there's what's called innate wisdom. Basically, we'll say there's 4 kinds of wisdom. There's innate wisdom, which we have as a residue from our practice in previous lives, having cultivated wisdom. right? Just like certain people have different qualities as an innate quality and imprint from previous lives. Then there's the kind of wisdom that we develop this lifetime, which is of the variety that arises from hearing or reading the teachings. We say arisen from hearing. Secondly, the wisdom that arises, a deeper kind of wisdom when we investigate that analytically. We contemplate that. We look at it from, like in debate, looking at it from many different ways, trying to see whether it's true or not. A much deeper wisdom arises from simply understanding the words. Okay? That's called the wisdom arisen from contemplation, perhaps. And then there's a wisdom arisen from meditation. You might say, well, that contemplation can be meditation. But here, when we say the wisdom arisen from meditation, it means a deeper kind of wisdom that arises that having understood something verbally and analyzed it, contemplated it, and gotten the right mental image, then holding that single-pointedly, that mental image single-pointedly, or that taste, that conclusion that you came, say, death is definite, analyzing it many different ways on the level of contemplation, getting some feeling of that, some understanding, holding that single-pointedly then, eventually with a union of Shine and Nakton or Shamatha and Vipassana, but right now just holding it single-pointedly, there can be another stage of wisdom that arises that's called the wisdom arisen from meditation. Okay? Different than just contemplating it. Now you're no longer analyzing, you're not just thinking of the words, it's non-verbal, it's not analytical, it's just having seen something to some degree true, holding it single-pointedly, a deeper kind of wisdom that can arise, the wisdom arisen from meditation. So those three kinds of wisdoms, in addition to the innate wisdom, how do we get innate wisdom in our next life? By listening, contemplating, and meditating. That meditation, that's what leaves a deep kind of imprint in the mind. That's why it's said that actual practice, the more that we practice, the more there's going to be an imprint in our mind. So rather than shunning the teachings and shunning study and saying, oh, that's too hard, that's just for, scholars or galukpas or something like that, I don't know what people say, to actually put effort in study and teachings, listening to the teachings, contemplating them, and meditating on them, and that then we will not have a situation in the future that when we try to think about anything, our mind is dull. Here it says, at the time, when our mind is, when our intellect, our intelligence is clouded with respect to everything that is knowable. Here it says, all worth knowing. This is the Wheel of Sharp Weapons coming back from having, how did we say? Left out the Dharma, taken the Dharma as worthy to be put aside, or taken, as it says here, claiming as the Dharma what ought to be put aside. I find that a little bit awkward. It doesn't sound exactly as is meant here. But at either rate, not appreciating the Dharma and getting caught up in other things, not spending time in Dharma practice. From now on, for the sake of Dharma, Chuchir, here the verse before that. From now on, I shall cultivate Tusok Sherab. Tusok means these three kinds of wisdom. The wisdom of hearing, the wisdom of contemplation, and the wisdom of meditation. I shall cultivate those for that purpose. So, as an antidote, and to recognize that this is the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, when you can't understand things, it's because we haven't cultivated that wisdom. We don't have the innate wisdom now, and there's that dullness. Does that make sense? 29. How are we doing? 29. When I am overcome by sleep, while practicing the Dharma, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for piling up obscurations to the holy Dharma. From now on, I shall undergo hardship for the sake of the Dharma. Does that make sense? So at the time of oppressed by sleep, when we practice the Dharma, Yeah, like you come to a teaching and you get, you fall asleep, or you can't. You're trying to meditate during retreat and you fall asleep. This is the result of our past karma. This is the wheel of sharp weapons coming back that we created. We spun it into action before, due to collecting obscurations with respect to the holy Dharma. So pardon?
What does that mean?
Well, different things. For instance, we create obscurations with respect to the Dharma by not, like say, putting our feet toward the altar, by walking over the books, by using the books, to sit on or something like that. Some people actually do this, or they take a bunch of Dharma books and they use it as a ladder to fix their curtains or to paint the wall or something like this. Soquel Rinpoche used to say, if you go to the toilet, like in India and Nepal, often the toilet outside was a hole in the ground, right, with some slats of wood. What do we call them here? Right, outside, but a deep one or something. I don't know, what do they call it? There's some name for them. So anyway, sometime in the mountains of Nepal, you go in this little room and you look down and it's actually 500 feet down, something like that. So, but if it's just a short distance, he said, if you see down there a 100 rupee note, this was in India, I say like a $10 bill, you feel no worry about going down and picking that out. But if you saw down there a piece of scripture, a pecha, piece of the Buddhist scripture, maybe you'd think, oh, that's someone's toilet paper. You wouldn't think to take that out. So some of the precepts of refuge are to treat any statue of the Buddha as actual enlightened being, even if it's broken or not well made. To treat even a piece of cloth of the color of the Sangha's robes as though it were the actual robes of the Sangha, put on your head. Drondenpa used to do that even when he found on the ground a piece of red cloth or yellow cloth. He'd put on his head, he'd clean it off, tie it to a branch of a tree and bow and say, whoever wore this has qualities that I do not have. And to treat even one letter of the Dharma, one letter of the alphabet even, or one letter, certainly any of the Dharma teachings, as the actual Dharma, to respect that, helps to prevent obscurations. Acting otherwise creates some subtle obscurations. Also obscurations by selling the Dharma, selling Dharma things for profit, to eat, to live on. Those kinds of activities create obscurations in the mind. There's a very famous story of one great yogi of Avalokiteshvara who was invited to a patron's house. And while he was eating the dinner that the patrons had made for him and his assistants, some other monks, I think, Avalokiteshvara, he started getting complete fever. And Avalokiteshvara appeared to him. He was a great yogi. And he asked what was the reason for this. And Avalokiteshvara said, you are a very fortunate being. You have very few obscurations. And so this negative karma is ripening on you now. The food that is being served to you was purchased by selling the scriptures. And your monks who are with you, who don't have this pure karma, to be able to experience it now, they will experience great obscurations in the future. So it's said to be these are different ways that one can accumulate obscurations with respect, not respecting the Dharma, not respecting the Buddha Dharma Sangha. Like that. Those are different ways that one can accumulate obscurations with respect to the Dharma. Dampe chöla tipa sarvai. So from now on, I will undergo hardships for the sake of Dharma. Chuchir kawachebacha. So, whatever is needed to be done for the practice of Dharma, I will try to undergo whatever is necessary, even if it means giving up sleep and so forth for the sake of keeping my commitments and so forth. And then, 30, do we have time? Yeah. When I delight in the afflictions, Does that sound familiar? And am greatly distracted. It is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for not meditating upon impermanence and the shortcomings of cyclic existence. From now on, I shall increase my dissatisfaction for cyclic existence. Lama Zopa, my teacher Lama Zopa Rinpoche, has said that when we find ourselves overcome by attachment, the reason is we didn't, or let's say in the morning, he said, in the morning, when the alarm clock rings, and you think, I want to stay in bed, I want to stay a bit longer. This is the fault of not having meditated on the shortcomings of cyclic existence. Here, not meditating on impermanence and the, how does it say, the shortcomings? Shortcomings of cyclic existence. All of the things that we call pleasure are actually the nature of suffering. The Arya beings recognize. It's actually the truth that the Arya beings recognize. Our contaminated happiness is dukkha. You could call it unsatisfactory, but not putting too fine a line on it, you could just say suffering. It's the nature of suffering. You can't say it's suffering because we experience it as happiness, but it's the nature of suffering. It's the nature of dukkha. What we call happiness, contaminated happiness, is the nature of suffering. That doesn't mean there's no happiness. There is uncontaminated happiness, something like we might call dharma happiness, the little happiness that we start to experience now, compared to the big possible chocolate bar, Pringles happiness that we might, that's really not real happiness, right? But that's so shattering to us, so obvious to us, sort of like the brilliant lights, that we forget about this little dharma happiness, contentment that's growing in our mind, that comes about not through coming in contact with contaminated phenomena, but through meditating on the dharma, such that whatever we experience is experienced as bliss. So, when I delight in the afflictions, so when I'm happy to get involved in the klesha, and greatly distracted away from the dharma, this is the cause for this, is that we have not meditated on impermanence and the shortcomings of cyclic existence. Impermanence, as we're saying in our initial meditation, what life we have left is constantly going. Lifetime is our lifespan is constantly decreasing. What little time that we have to practice dharma is going. And so understanding that, and that we have to leave all of these things behind, a person would not be distracted, and they would not delight in the afflictions. So from now on, I shall increase my dissatisfaction for cyclic existence. Here the word is that they translate as dissatisfaction is yijong, arising of the mind, korwar yijung, cheparja. I shall increase my dissatisfaction for cyclic existence. So what do you think? Cyclic existence a good place? We might think, yeah, I found many people have told me, I like it here. This is nice. Actually, I don't like it. This is samsara. I don't know where there's anywhere. The Buddha said, anywhere you go in cyclic existence is like carrying a big bale of thorns on your back. You're gonna suffer everywhere. So don't be surprised you've got some suffering. Everyone's got suffering. You think you've got suffering. You want to get out of. You can't get out of samsara. Even you commit suicide, you can't get out of samsara. In fact, by committing suicide, you create even the causes for much greater suffering in the future. We think people who was it some years ago, Dr. Death? Do you remember Dr. Death? Dr. Kevorkian? Helping people to commit suicide. Maybe, I don't know, just looking at him, I doubt. I have doubt that he's got pure motivation. Maybe it's my own misapprehension. But could be that he's got good, had some semblance of good motivation. But without the wisdom of knowing where that mind is going to go, sometimes by experiencing some suffering now, we prevent experiencing a rebirth in the future. So to think, I got to get out, I can't stand this any longer. I got to get out of this place, like the old We talked about that song before. Remember, was it The Doors or someone? The Animals. I got to get out of this. You can't get out of. You can get out of this life, but you're not getting out of samsara by killing yourself, right? Do you follow what I mean? In fact, you're creating by especially if you've taken any tantric initiation, or if you just think in terms of the karma of taking lifespan, shortening this perfect human rebirth, you create incredible obstacles for the future. Let's finish there. Let's, what was that? That was number 30? Or 29? 30. So next time we remember. Let's just dedicate the merits now, as Venerable Jimmy suggested, within some understanding of the emptiness of the three spheres. But this is a two-step process, right, Venerable? First, you have to do conventional dedication. To think, tonight I've created some virtuous karma, some roots of virtue, with a good motivation at the beginning, some semblance of good motivation, bodhicitta motivation, listening to Mahayana teachings, trying to do it correctly, keeping concentration, not falling asleep. Now, knowing that karma has a efficacy within cyclic existence, it will come about as some relief, some what we call contaminated happiness in general, if we don't dedicate it. We can actually transform that by dedicating it so that it is not exhausted until we experience uncontaminated happiness, until we experience enlightenment. It can become a cause of that, a condition for that. Through this aspiration, strong wishing, due to this, may it become a cause of my eliminating my faults. Like the Buddha said, do nothing that is negative. Developing all my good qualities and virtuous karma, store of virtue. Taming my mind. Becoming a real bodhisattva, working, practicing the 10 perfections. Really becoming the worthy of the name human being. Due to this merit, may I quickly become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, a Guru Buddha that leads them out of suffering. And having dedicated it conventionally, try to seal that within the three spheres of emptiness. The karma that we've created, recognizing that is empty of existing from its own side. It's just merely imputed karmic seeds created from actions that were merely imputed, not findable anywhere. The goal dedicated to our own enlightenment and the benefit of all sentient beings, although it can exist conventionally in the future, has no findable existence, no true existence. And the active dedication, only imputed onto these moments of meditative activity, aspiring that this karma ripen in that way. You can't find the dedication anywhere. It's just a name we attribute to that collection of parts. The self who is dedicating, merely a name. You know, where is Bonnie? Where is Beth? Where is, the Venerable? Just a name that we impute to a collection of parts in a certain situation. We are empty of true existence. There's no self the way that it appears. That's dedicating. Thank you very much. So we'll try to continue. Maybe we're getting on a roll now. We can do almost 10 a day, huh? So we can start, maybe we can do 12, and then we'll work up to about 15 a day, then we can start slowing down again. You know how they say your Dharma practice should be like the shape of a barley? Have you heard that before? The beginning slow, then middle big, Then at the end, slow down. Like when you fill up the water bowls, you pour the water slowly, then the middle faster, and then slow at the end so you don't overflow. So when you do retreat also, you start slowly. In the middle, you say many mantras, you do very strict, and then at the end, you kind of slow down a little. So we're just speeding up a little. Now for the middle, we'll be catching up. Venerable, you have a question?
Yeah, I heard you sort of imply that there's two ways of purification. One would be like the nun row, and that this particular text here is a second type of purification.
Yeah.
Could you explain that?
Well, ngundro, I don't know, ngundro just means preliminary practice. Everything we do,
Right.
ngundro, that which goes before.
You were saying,
So,
how do you're saying bodhisattva, and then you said something else. And I was trying to understand what that something else was.
Yeah, when we can't realize things, Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa, when Lama Tsongkhapa actually had vision of Manjushri, Lama Tsongkhapa said, "What's the quickest way to make realization?" And Manjushri said, "You need three things. You need to sagjang, means to collect virtue and purify negativity. That's one. You need to pray to the Guru as oneness with the deity. And you need to meditate. Just meditating alone, some people just go and meditate. It's not enough. Some people just collect merit. They just do mundro again and again. That doesn't necessarily make any realizations. Some people may just devotional, just praying to God or the Guru or something like that. So if you put all of that together, but meditation means also developing, to meditate properly, you have to have the accumulation of hearing, contemplation, and wisdom. Then when you have something to meditate on, you can develop the wisdom arisen from meditation. Without having heard the teachings, you have nothing to meditate on. You just have some vague idea. Oh, bodhicitta, emptiness. It's like nothing. The lamas sometimes say it's like a armless person trying to climb a mountain. It's the same as a person who has not heard or contemplated or meditated on the teachings, thinking that they can meditate. Many times people come, they don't know anything. They just hear the word shunyata and they think they understand it, but it's very, very subtle. Bodhicitta, we can see, to touch that vital spot, to find out what the self-cherishing thought is, takes a lot of study, understanding. So the great meditators of the past have not just disdained learning at all. They all, Lama Tsongkhapa, Sakya Pandita, all of the great lamas of the different traditions, Longchenpa, all of these great lamas, they had incredible scholarly credentials. They understood the teachings, but they went beyond the words. So that's what we're saying, when the mind is overcome by dullness, this is the wheel of sharp weapons coming back, because we don't have that innate wisdom now. We haven't created the wisdom of hearing, contemplation, or meditation, and we didn't do it in the past, so we have to do it now. We have to listen to the teachings and study. Then in the future, we'll have that store of innate wisdom to be able to understand the